we are with Front of the Class, real stories from real educators. And here today with Leigh Harris. Leigh, can you share some of those teaching details that every teacher wants to know? Where do you teach? What grades? What subjects? Private or public? Is it a big school, small school? All that kind of cool stuff. How do you describe to other teachers in the know all those details about your current year of teaching?
So I teach third grade at Mallard Creek STEM Academy, which is a public charter school, kind of on the north side of Charlotte. Go Titans. I teach all subjects, so math, reading, science, and social studies. My school is pretty big. It's a kindergarten through eighth grade school. There's about 25 kids a class, two separate campuses. It's pretty large, but I enjoy it.
Okay, awesome. And how did you get into teaching in the first place? What drew you to it? And maybe also, how long have you been teaching so far?
So this is my 8th year teaching. When I went to school, I told myself I wasn't going to be a teacher. In high school, I was like a swim coach and I worked at summer camp. So I always kind of worked with kids. But I let people kind of influence me, and I was like, no, I'm not going to be a teacher. Like, they're so disrespected, or they're not paid well. Like, I'm not going to do it. So I went to college actually as a nursing major, and I got into East Carolina. Go Pirates! But quickly realized that was not for me, and then I dabbled in about 5 or 6 other majors. I was undecided. I was like criminal justice. I was like sports science, like all these different things. And finally, I was having a talk with my mom, and she was like, just do it. Like, you find a way to make the best out of things. You'll find a way to make the best out of this. Just do it. It's what you should be doing. You've always worked with kids. And so I changed and I did do it. And graduated still within about 4 years. And here I am.
Awesome. And been doing it after, no, I'm not doing that, to, I'm going to try these other 5 things. No, I'm not going to do those either. Okay, now I'm going to go back to this thing that I said I wasn't going to do. You've now been in that world for 8 years.
Yeah.
What's kept you in it for that long? What keeps you coming back?
The biggest thing for me is the relationships with kids, the relationships with their parents, the relationships with my coworkers, with my admin. Truly is the thing that keeps me coming back. I still talk to kids and their parents that I taught, 5 and 6 years ago. I still support them at their sporting events, or, I'm going to recitals, or about to watch a whole group of them get their license. And the relationships truly are the biggest thing for me.
Awesome. And you mentioned you're at this kind of STEM, public school, charter schools, different situation. It's not a private school. It's not a straight public school. Can you help us understand a little bit more of what that means? What's special about that school, and how did you end up there?
So a public charter school kind of has aspects of, you take a little bit of private and a little bit of public and you mix them together, and you have this public charter school. Like, we still wear uniforms. But like a public school, every kid gets free breakfast and lunch. So you kind of take different things there. How I ended up there, public school, true public school, honestly was a horrible time. To put it plainly, it was a horrible time. A lot of things happened. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. Like, it was like year 2 and I was like, I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. And I got the opportunity from a friend who was like, hey, I'm at this school. It's way better than the last school we were at. So the public school we were at. And she was like, I'll put in a good word for you. And surely enough, I got a call to come and do an interview, and I got it. And I've been there ever since. This is my 6th year at Mallard Creek STEM Academy.
Okay, awesome. So again, for all of those out there who might not necessarily like the exact school, role, district, wherever you are, it sounds like you went from, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Maybe I need to stop teaching, to you've been doing it for 6 more years and you really enjoy the school. Sometimes it can take just one little tweak and it goes from bad to great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
For
obviously it could
sure.
go the other way too, from great to bad, right? But
Yeah.
sometimes it's just one little tweak and just find the right tweak. And sound like you had a great relationship with the person who went from the school you were both at to this new
Yeah.
school who pulled you along. So thank you for that friend.
No, yeah. Sometimes it takes one person to truly change things around. So I'm grateful.
Yep. Awesome. And is there anything in particular over, say, the next 3, 6, 12 months? Maybe you pick your time frame of what's particularly energizing you looking forward. Maybe to, we're recording this in February. Maybe it's finishing up this particular school year, starting the next. Maybe it's summer. What energizes you looking forward after you've been doing this for 8 years? What do you look forward to and still think, yeah, I'm excited about this?
I mean, I guess any teacher would tell you it's about to be March. So the thing I'm looking forward to is spring break and then summer break. We are at that point in the school year where some days you're like, gosh, is this a twilight zone? Like kids have kind of just like, we're getting to the point where we've like been in school so long when they're getting over it and they're doing things and you're like, what? And then it starts to get you like, oh my goodness, we're just trying to make it. We're just trying to make it. Like we only have, you know, 55 more instructional days till the end of grade testing. We can do this. So in that shorter time frame, I'm truly just looking forward to summer. I usually take lots of time off in the summer. I go to the beach, I travel, I do other things, and I truly just relax.
Take advantage of those days off and that schedule that is unique to the teaching profession.
Yeah.
Uh, and further, you have an interesting story in the sense that you are not just teaching, you're also a licensed real estate agent.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you got into that, how you balance the two, when you make time for both of these different careers? Can you share a little bit more about your story of deciding to get into real estate and how you're managing doing both of these things that could both be full-time jobs?
Yeah. So I actually have a couple friends that are realtors, and they would always tell me, like, they would tell me stories of just about their jobs and like what they do. And they would always tell me, like, you have such a great personality to be a realtor. Like, you're so outgoing. Like, you could talk to anyone. Like, this would be so good. This would be so good. And they told me that for probably like a year and a half to 2 years. And finally, I didn't really know what it took to be a realtor. I knew you had to like get a license for it, but I thought, oh, you go to school a couple months, you take a test, like it'll be fine. And so finally they convinced me and I was like, well, I'll just sign up for the class and like I'll just do it. Well, I got in the class and joke was on me because I was like, oh, this is hard. This is really hard. Um, but I stuck it out, which meant 3 days a week for a few months. I was in real estate school from 6 to 9. So I went to work all day, had a couple hours off, and then in school again from 6 to 9. And I had to take 3 separate tests at the end of it. And then finally I was licensed. And at first, a lot of people did tell me, like, you can't be a part-time real estate agent. You can't be part-time. Like, it just takes a lot of work. You have to be full-time. Um, and it kind of started out as like, just like friends or people I worked with at school, like, oh, hey, I'm interested in buying a house, or hey, I'm interested in buying a house. And so I'd be like, okay, well, yeah, if you're looking for someone, sure. And then that kind of just like spiraled into referrals and then finding a great firm. And I'm with Wilson Realty right now. And then, I did get to the point where I was like, well, maybe I do want to do this full time instead of teaching. And that just came with a conversation with my executive director. And I was like, hey, yeah, I think I'm gonna head out and do this. And she just really worked with me and we talked about a way that it could work that I could do both. Essentially, I didn't have to leave teaching and I didn't have to give up real estate at all. And it just kind of worked because teachers being underpaid is a real thing. And being able to have something that pays well on the side is obviously a bonus. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have the chance to do both.
Awesome. And congratulations. Kudos to you for sticking with 3 nights a week, nights after already being in the classroom all day to then
Yeah.
as a teacher to then in the classroom all night to go be a student. So
Mm.
kudos to you. And I'm curious if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more on that conversation of, did you go into that conversation of, I'm ready to quit? Did you go into that conversation with, hey, I'd like to figure out how both work? How did you initiate? And then it sounded like you were ready to quit. And then the person kind of like reeled you back in and like, no, we'll figure this out. There's a way you can do both. Do you recall how that conversation went? And did his or her reaction, who you spoke to, surprise you?
Um, so yes, I went into that conversation like I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was ready to be done. And I felt like I was just making so much more money. It was a lot less time, a lot less, just more flexibility. And it was my executive director. And she was like very open to like, okay, well, what can I do to make this work? Like, if I give you this, is that okay? And it took a couple no's. I was like, nah, I don't think that's worth it. Like, and then she finally kept on like adding a little more and then adding a little more. And finally it was like, okay, like, I don't think it would be silly of me at this point. And it didn't really surprise me. When I talked about relationship building, she is a person that have always been super close with. Like, I used to walk into her office and she used to have this couch, and I quite literally, like, during my planning, used to lay on her couch and just be like, I just need to vent. And she would just sit there and listen to me. And I've told her as recently as like a month ago, like, I still work here because of you. Like, you are my why.
Mm.
Like, so she's always been very kind to me and really given me just a lot of grace, and really supported me in everything I've done in my life. To stray away a little bit, I created like a handwriting book in print and in cursive. And my first year, she bought it for the whole school.
Mm.
So like, she's just always really supported me. And she's a big reason why I'm still at her school.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. And I love that you have told her that she's your why. And I do think that's sometimes something we don't always necessarily do when we see someone do a great job, or when we really like somebody or how we work with them. We don't always tell them. Like, we
Yeah.
might tell our spouse at home or somebody else, like, just go tell the person you appreciate them. So
Yeah.
that's a really powerful thing to do, is when you see something you like, show that appreciation, and
Hmm.
tell someone you appreciate working with them and you're the reason why you're still there. That's awesome that you did that.
Yeah.
A couple more, like, I don't know, memorable experiences maybe in the classroom I'd love to delve into. Do you happen to have a coolest or most enjoyable or proudest moment in the classroom or in your teaching career? Maybe something that you look back on and it still makes you smile that you did that or that student did that. Does anything come to mind on kind of proudest moments in the classroom?
I think my proudest moments are made up of like a lot of little moments. Um, Especially ones where like you think a student has just like really worked your nerves. I mean, it could be all year and you're like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. And this actually happened last year. And oh, this little girl, I mean, oh my goodness, smart as a whip, but she worked my nerves to the very last day of school. But on the last day of school, she was like, I have something for you. And I thought, oh goodness, like, what could it possibly be? Something that tells me she hates my guts. But she gave me this letter. And in the letter, she was like, you're the best teacher I've ever had and who pays attention to me. And she was like, and I love you so much. And I can't imagine my life without you. And I was like, oh my goodness. We went back and forth all year long. I mean, about small things as little as a pencil to big things, like, because she didn't want to do work or she would throw herself on the floor, or like she would just do a lot. So to get this note, I thought for sure she was going to be like, I hate your guts. I can't wait to get out of here. But surely enough, she was like, I can't imagine being anywhere but here. And so that it's stuff like that that I'm like, okay, so even though it didn't feel like it, like she was listening to me this whole time. Like she was actually taking in the things that I was saying, even as young as third grade. So those are my like coolest moments.
Yeah, that's awesome. That goes back to the exact same point we just had in the last one of, showing appreciation when you genuinely like someone's approach or how they do something, or you like them as a teacher or an executive director or principal, whatever. Like show that
Yeah.
appreciation because it goes such a long way. Because like you shared, if she didn't write that, you would have assumed that she would have walked out of your classroom thinking, I don't like her as my teacher. I hope I never have her again. But
Mhm.
that's not actually how she felt. And you would have never known that if she didn't write that note. So again, show that appreciation, people, for when you see
Yeah.
something that you like, people that you like to be around. How about anything that strikes you for just wildest, craziest, kids say the darndest things. I still can't believe that actually happened type moment. Anything strike you in your 8 years teaching that you're maybe able or willing to share? Maybe there's no names involved, anything wild, crazy, or I can't believe they said that type moments in your teaching career that stand out.
Yeah. And for this purpose, I won't use any names or anything, but I'm going to take it back. I told you I started in public school before I got to charter. And those are some wild times, let me tell you. My very first year of teaching, I had another student who, I mean, to give an example, would literally take a Sharpie, like hide a Sharpie in his sleeve. And while we were walking down the hall, would draw down the hall, run the Sharpie down the wall of the hallway. Like that's what, and I would be like, what are you doing? Like, why? What are you doing? What are you doing? Or would throw his homework away in the hallway trash on the way out to the bus. So he never had his
Yeah,
homework. Just stuff like that. So to
yeah.
give you a little background, um, and one day I like pulled him to the side and I was like, why? Like, just let me know. I said, we're gonna have a real conversation here. This was fourth grade. And I was like, why? Like, for what? What are we doing this stuff for? And I was like, I said, I'm speaking to you as a real person. I said, forget Miss Harris. I said, I'm speaking to you as a real person. Like, what is going on here? Well, long story short, he's like, yeah, the people I hang out with in my neighborhood, like they're older and they always have me doing stuff and they're always picking on me. And I'm like, what do you mean they have you doing stuff? Like doing stuff like what? And he was like kind of hesitant. And I was like, you need to tell me, like, what's going on? Come to find out, he's like, yeah, they gave me this white stuff. The white stuff turned out to be cocaine in the fourth grade. Um,
Jeez.
in the fourth grade, like some high school kids who lived in the neighborhood were like giving him like cigarettes and like weed and cocaine. They were like giving him drugs and like thinking it was funny to see what happened to him.
Oh, that's
So,
awful.
yeah. So that obviously came with a bunch of extra steps afterward that I'll save the details of. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was like the craziest thing. I mean, I had literally just graduated, like, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm ready. And I was like, oh, I'm not ready. Whew, this is too much for me. Yeah.
That is indeed a wild story in
Yeah.
teaching. Sorry that you went through that. Obviously, I hope everything worked out okay.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
any particularly tough time, maybe that was one, but any particularly tough times or tough moments in your career, and how'd you handle them or bounce back?
yeah. So that was, a long time ago now. I'll kind of bring it back to the present. What's kind of tough these days is just teachers, like teacher friends of mine and my coworkers and colleagues, we talk about a lot, like how kids are a lot different than we were as kids. And I'm not old by any means. Like I'm 29. Like, so I wasn't in school like that long ago. Um, but they are a different breed of kids. And what's really tough now is like honestly, getting their parents to take some accountability for their learning. Like it's much harder to teach kids these days when there is a lack of accountability for their learning. So, like, to give an example, honestly, that happened today, happened yesterday. We've had snow days. Um, and so they're remote learning days. So I, post work on platforms that we use every single day at school. And it's about to be March. And I'm getting parent message after parent message, like, I don't know how to log on to, I don't know how to get on. And I was like, well, if you ask your child how to do so, they do it every single day. I promise you, they know how to get on and they know their login information. So just that accountability and holding kids accountable, having their parents hold them accountable, and then having to hold other adults accountable is really tough. Because it seems like, whether it's the truth or not is a different story, but it really seems like I care the most. And that's really hard when it seems like I care the most out of everyone else involved.
And in a situation like that, how do you handle that? Like when you feel like you care the most, like, because one could argue, well, if I just keep caring the most, then eventually they'll care as much as me. Or one could argue, I'm going to burn out. Like I can't possibly do this and put more energy into this if I'm not going to have that reciprocal feeling. So when you have that, like how like after 8 years of doing this, like how have you kind of learned how to handle that balance of do you keep pushing and do you keep trying to care more, or do you kind of just, I'm going to save my energy on these two and focus on these two because they might be potentially maybe able or willing to meet me where I am, and they're gonna be uplifted by me caring. So how do you handle something like that?
A little bit of a couple things. So kind of like what you said, you kind of like redirect some of that energy to kids and parents who do care. And that doesn't mean you don't support the ones who don't. It just means you support the other ones a little more. That's one way. And then I'm always gonna revert back to great relationships. Like I lean on my team a lot, and because we're all in the same boat, so they just get it. And having people that get it and kind of let you vent without judgment or without anything else, I mean, is really a blessing. Because people who don't get it maybe think it's not that bad, or like they're 8. Like, why do you let an 8-year-old get you this riled up? Like, well, let me tell you, some kids are 8 going on 18. So I'm really grateful for my team and being able to lean on them when things get a little hard, because like I said, they're going through it as well. And someone else on my team might be like, oh yeah, I know that parent. Here's a great way to deal with them. Or, oh yeah, I had that kid's brother 3 years ago. This is a great way to deal with that. So just really bouncing ideas off of each other is really helpful as well. Or when you just really can't deal with it anymore, I might go, to my teammate next door and be like, can you draft a message for me for this? Because I know what I'm going to say. It's not going to be as kind as what it needs to be. So just having someone who isn't dealing with them every single day, all day, they just have a fresh pair of eyes and are able to really say something or handle something much better than I would be able to in that moment.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm curious to delve into one more aspect of this, just because with the background with your mom, who you referenced to, you kind of had some hard conversations with about what you wanted to do professionally, and she kind of pointed you in this direction of teaching. It seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, like she was a great mentor for you. She had that accountability. You learned that accountability from her in some way. And where I go with that is this, like, what if anything, how did she show that, or what if anything did she do for you that you wish you could convey to some of these other parents of like, hey, I'm not trying to tell you how to raise your kids. I'm not. But here's what my mom did for me that I really appreciated. Feel free to use this with your kid or not, but like some way to kind of showcase to them, here's what worked for you or what you saw, without it being, you better do this, because no one ever does that, right?
Yeah.
But some sense of this, I really appreciated this when I was 8,
Yeah.
that my mom did for me. Does anything strike you that stands out, that's something that your mom did for me that you'd love to convey to maybe so that some of those other parents of how to help take the reins on that accountability?
I mean, I don't ever remember a time where like I wasn't sitting at a table doing my homework and either my mom or my dad wasn't right there. And if I didn't get something, Then he went and got a sheet of paper, and I had to do 3 more examples just like it. He would just switch up the numbers. Like, I had to understand. During the summertime, it wasn't time off. Before I could go do anything, my mom had gotten me workbooks and like things. I had to do a reading page and a math page, and they were for like, if I was going into the 4th grade, they were 4th grade workbooks, so that I kind of already had a little introduction to what was coming. And she would just help me on it. But I also like, I remember in kindergarten, I had to know my mom's first and last name. I had to know our home phone number, and I had to know our address,
Yeah.
just in case anything ever happened to me. There are kids sitting in my class, and I'm like, "What's your mom's name?" Well, I just call her mom. And I'm like, "You don't know your mom's name?"
Wow.
So it's kind of like, well, wait a second. So I think there's a lot of like, I don't want to say babying, because they are babies in a sense. Like, they are 8, but they're capable of so much more than some parents think they are. And I have even had a parent say, like, because I always allow parents, like, come into my class. You are welcome to sit in the back, watch me teach, watch your kid, watch what's going on. And I even had a parent tell me, like, hey, I think I am coddling my kid a little bit, because these kids can do so much. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
they can. Like, please allow them to. But it's really funny because in my class, when I realize a bunch of kids don't know how to do something, I'll call my mom in class and I'll put her on speakerphone. And I'm like, hey, mom, when I was 6, 7, 8, did I know how to do A, B, C, or D? And she's like, yeah, you knew how to
And
do that.
all the students can hear your mom say this in front of them.
I'll tell my
That's
mom, like,
awesome.
Mom, you're on with the class. I've done that several times because I think they think I'm just trying to like tell them what to
Yeah.
do. And I'm like, no, I had to do this.
Yeah.
Like, I lived through it. I'm not just telling you something that I didn't do or can't do. So yeah, I'll call my mom often and I'm like, Mom, we're on with the class. Like, did I have to do A, B, C, or D? And she's like, well, yeah, when you were a kid, you had to do blah, 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 blah. And you didn't have a phone and you didn't have a tablet because, all the kids have all this tech these days. And she'll tell them herself. I'll call my mom quick.
I have never heard that before, but
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe this is something that you do consistently that others don't do, but I am curious, what have you done in your teaching career consistently that seems to work for you that you're surprised others don't do or don't do more of? And maybe it's call your mom and ask if, hey, was I able to do this at this age? But yeah, does anything strike you for that? Of what do you do consistently that seems to just really work well for you and you're surprised more teachers don't do that thing?
I mean, anything that I can think of all falls under one umbrella. And that umbrella is holding kids to the highest of expectations. Um, and I can honestly answer why they don't do it. It is really hard to keep that momentum going all of the time. It's really hard to do that. It's really easy to be like, okay, you just take this day off because I'm tired, you're tired. You got to keep going even when you're tired. But holding them to the highest of expectations, like, no, they can do this. And I know they can and they will. And I don't want to use the word force, but essentially like forcing them to do things that they didn't think they could.
Yeah.
Um, which, I mean, to some parents sounds really mean, especially at the beginning of the year. But by the end of it, I have very few that are like, wow, yeah, you really pushed them. Like, you really had them growing. Like, because that's the goal is, even if you're not the smartest in the class, you can grow so much. But whether you are the smartest or you're not the smartest and you're just working on growth, all of you can be held to the highest of expectations. And that's as a person, as a student, in your learning, in your character, in all of it. I expect the best that they can do individually all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Sometimes that can be a hard message to deliver, but you can do it in a fun way. And also there's a phrase I've heard out there, like the tyranny of low expectations. Like if you keep your expectations low, then most people are, I don't know, they might even not even hit that bar, and they
Mhm.
could, and they probably know they could, and they know they can get away with stuff because
Mhm.
the expectations are so low, and it kind of can create a vicious cycle. And
Mhm.
there's that sweet spot of like, how do you create high expectations that aren't impossible because then everyone's going to give up, right? But that are achievable enough, but you got to do some work to get there, and then
Mhm.
reiterate. And maybe you do this with your students of when they blow past something that they weren't able to do and now they can do it, like
Mhm.
celebrating that. I'll give a really dumb example. Like, this is a super dumb example. This is not school teaching, but I have like a little 2.5-year-old, and he always tries to climb up on my desk.
Mhm.
And yesterday he's saying, I can't. And I just looked and like, well, can you figure out another way? And there's this little plastic bin under my desk, and he just
Yeah.
pulled it, and then he stepped up on it, and then he was able to climb up onto my desk using that.
Mhm.
And he didn't think about it. He didn't celebrate it, but I told him, I'm like, hey, I have no idea. He's 2.5. I have no idea if this really like resonates or not. But like,
Yeah.
and tell him like, hey, do you remember like just a little bit ago, you said you couldn't do that. And now look what you did. You moved the bin. You're now on my desk. You could do it. You did do it. Do you see how
Right.
you can go from I can't to I did? And we do a little high five. And I have no idea if that's going to resonate or not, but it just like, I want to celebrate those little moments to
Yeah.
showcase like you can push past that barrier, and maybe my expectations will be higher next time. But isn't it fun to push past the barrier and show you can do something that you didn't think you could do?
No, yeah. No, that's actually a great example. And I'll like twist it maybe just a little bit because they're a little bit older. But instead of, so at my school, like what it means to be a Titan means you're kind, you're safe, you're respectful, you're responsible, and you're resourceful. So when they are saying, I can't do something, I'm like, well, how can you be resourceful? So
Mm.
in your example, I would have had them be like, well, I can get a bin to get me on top of there and have them come up with that themselves. Great idea. Get the bin. Now you're at the bin. Now what can you do to get on top? Well, now I can climb on top because I have the bin.
Yeah.
Great. So using that example, just like kind of guiding them instead of like, hey, go get the bin. What can you get in our classroom or in our room to help you get there?
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that you've got some core values and you just rattled them off. You know what they
Yeah.
are, and you can reinforce them to your students as a way of driving home some of those behaviors to help build them. I love that.
Yeah.
Couple more just rapid fire type questions, mostly more advice for younger teachers or maybe those thinking about joining the profession. What's the number one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's about to start their first year teaching, or is maybe in their first year teaching? Or what advice might you go back and give yourself at that same time?
You don't have to be perfect right away, and you can adapt your own way of doing things.
Yep. 100%. 100%. And you obviously adapted by even just that last example of how can we be resourceful and how can you go do this? You're obviously adapting like that. I'm guaranteeing no one taught you how to do that. Like, that's
Yeah.
adapting to your own style. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, did you get your master's degree? And if so, what did that unlock for you? What did that allow you to do that you wouldn't have otherwise? And if you didn't get it, why not?
I do have my master's degree. I have a master's in elementary education with a concentration in leadership. I got it right after undergrad. I did it with the intention that eventually I was going to grow. Just having that growth mindset. So right now, it hasn't truly unlocked anything other than a little bit of a higher pay.
Yep, that's still good.
Um, which is still good, which is still great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if possible, if feasible, I would recommend anyone just go and get it.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever had this conversation with your STEM school, but since you already had your master's, for all we know, right, maybe that's a reason why they were like, yes, we want Leigh Harris to join our team. She's already got her math perfect. We like her. Like, you never know when you already have gotten the credential where that helps you get something that you
Mhm.
maybe wouldn't have otherwise gotten if you didn't have that. Again, I have no idea if that's true, but it's possible that helps you get that job. And again, higher pay. So it
Yeah.
works out. What to you is the single number one best thing about this profession?
I kind of touched on it before, but truly the relationships, like you just build so many great relationships with kids and families and like coworkers and everyone in a school, and everyone enjoying each other truly is the foundation of a great school. Because when you enjoy coming to work, well, then everyone can do what they need to do to be great. So the relationships are truly the best for me personally.
Yeah, and a fascinating connection then into your real estate career, where that is a relationship business. And I would
Mhm,
imagine, again, as you continue to do a great job as a teacher, build trust, build relationships over time,
mhm.
and people know that you're a real estate agent. Like, I would imagine those two things can kind of build a little bit on each other, because those are both very relationship driven professions.
Oh yeah, they definitely do. And being in a school has helped my real estate business. And I even talking about my executive director, I inspired her to get her real estate
Oh yeah,
license. She did it as well after I did it.
yeah.
But yeah, it has worked out, and relationship building is so big for me and has truly gotten me in more places than I feel like other things have.
Yep. Awesome. And on the other end of that spectrum, what to you is the single worst or toughest thing about this profession? Or if you had a magic wand and can point that wand at one thing and say, I don't have to deal with this anymore, or whatever it may be, where would you point that magic wand?
Um, I don't know, maybe two things. Bad parents, bad parents. Second thing, it's really tough to see kids who have like when you hear about things that they have to do and things they go through, some kids, I look at them and I'm like, you're almost more of an adult than I am. Just by the things you have to do. So it's really tough to have to like look at them every day and know that like when they go home, it's not going to be the most ideal of situations at all. You just want to like take them home with you.
Yeah. Um, quick question on the note of parents. Any strategies you have that you've learned through the years of kind of how to maybe, I don't know, how to deal with bad parents, or how to have an upfront conversation at the beginning of the year, like you mentioned about, hey, here's the expectations I have. Can I count on your support? Like, what are some of the things that you've done? Maybe you can never get rid of that as a magic wand wish, but how do you reduce that or try to get out in front of it? Or what are some strategies that you or some of your teacher friends have used to try to make that maybe be not as painful as it could be?
Having the conversation day one.
Yeah.
When open house in August, the week before school starts, I sit all the parents down. I have a whole presentation on it. These are my expectations because this is my classroom. And that's just it. So they know from the first day. It's much harder to like wait until November, December, January and be like, well, no, actually,
Yeah.
this is what I wanted to do. And they're like, why didn't you say that way back when?
Yeah.
Um, so setting that standard from the very beginning. And then when it comes to bad parents because there's always going to be some that they don't care what you say either way. They're like, this is my child and that's it. Take the 24 hours or 48 hours, whatever your school's rule is, take that whole time to respond to them. Um, Read the message, put the phone down, close the computer, and just take your 24 to 48 hours to truly respond. So that way the response is a lot less emotional and more just, okay, here's what it is and here's what it isn't. And that's just it.
Yes. Or do two of the things you mentioned earlier, like go lay on the couch of your executive director and vent, or go find somebody else in your teacher network who you can have translate for you. So when you say, "Arr," they can say, I'm sorry that we've come to this misunderstanding. Or have somebody help translate for you into the better version of what you hoped you'd said. Um,
No, yeah. The funny part is I have one of my teaching teammates, she actually will like bring the before she'll look and see like who the parent is and if it's like one of the ones, she'll actually come have someone else read it. She's like, "Can you read this before I do because I feel like this might make me upset."
yeah.
And then we read it and I'm like, "Oh no, it's not going to make you upset.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
good." Or I have to be like, "Yeah, just take your time reading that one."
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Rely on that network of folks
yeah.
around you. Knowing what you know now, would you still go down this teaching path and recommend it for others?
Um I would just do it a little differently. Because not everywhere, I don't want to speak for everywhere. You don't have to have a teaching license or a teaching degree. I'm so sorry, a teaching degree to teach. Um, but if you ever want to do something else, well, now you have a very specific degree. Whereas if I had gotten a more broad degree,
Mm.
it would be a lot easier to maybe transition into other things. But yeah, I would have taken a different path to it. But yeah, I still would have done it.
Yeah, awesome. And one last question: anything else that you think is valuable, fun, or worth sharing? Any last words of wisdom for the audience out there, or anything that you already shared that you think is so valuable that you're like, I want to re-highlight this because this is actually I don't want you to lose that admit at 7-Eleven. Like I want to re-highlight this thing. So anything new or anything worth re-sharing as last words of wisdom for the audience?
Um, if you're already a teacher, you're in the very beginning or wanting to be a teacher, don't count out your very first school. It might take 2 or 3 schools to find a great place to be at. Um, and then when you're there, build the best relationships you can.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Real stories with real educators, Leigh Harris. Great anecdotes, great strategies for how to deal with common problems, and just a great energy. So thank you so much for joining us here today,
Yeah.
Leigh.
Thank you so much for having me.